section I'm going to read.
Last meeting when they're basically deciding.
Jason, Christina, and the rest of their crew are at another secret hideout, waiting for the newly elected president to give his inauguration speech. And that's why I had to read this section, because, you know, for obvious reasons here. You'll see quite shortly.
Yeah.
Billy Bob turned to Jason and grinned. If all Yankees were like Jason, he thought maybe the North wouldn't have been filled to the brim with carpetbaggers. Countless people acted like they were down for the cause, but only cared about their own needs. Growing up in the South taught Billy Bob some good things and some toxic things. Is that the key? Is that why the entities were headquartering in a place that was the antithesis of home of the free? During the Civil Rights era, the South was on the precipice of major change. Some ideas ended up being squelched for being too radical. They needed to return to the radical history. Billy Bob was about to open his mustachioed mouth as a TV came on. I think the TV is talking, Jason described to universal looks of how stoned are you. I was going to ask how stoned you are, but judging by the eye rolls around this table, I'd say everybody already thought it for me, Bryan sarcastically replied. The entire table reveled in much-needed levity. This was something they needed to cultivate in themselves, as well as everybody else once they left the warehouse. Nobody knew what the streets would be like. Not to sound like a broken record, but some guy is talking, Jason repeated, pointing at the supremely unfunny joke about to take the oath of office. He expected nothing less than a hate-mongering marionette to be under the control of Christina's mom. It's the puppet of the year. Before the rest of the group reacted, words oozed out of the 1993 barely working picture tube TV. Having just been inaugurated a few hours ago, I'm getting used to what president means. The decisions I make and legislation I push through affect all of us. I will make careful decisions not only to benefit myself, but the whole country. Is he thinking out loud? Did he just discover that he can't benefit only himself? Christina loudly observed. She knew he was a puppet for the most radical agenda the world ever saw, but still, man, this guy is dumb. He isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Just remember, though, half the country voted for him. Does that mean they're dumb, too? Billy Bob fired back. He was comfortable in his and Jason's friendship enough to challenge Christina, even if she was intoxicated by the most original designer drug in history. Some of these people have been dosed, some haven't. Some are rabid racists, some aren't. Painting people with the same broad brush led to this problem in the first place. Just as Christina was forming her rebuttal, she shifted uneasily in her chair. She didn't want to sit on her ass anymore. She was antsy for action. She wanted more than anything to stop her mother once and for all. Christina found it darkly funny that they needed to save the country first. Her mind spun with possibilities. Almost as if he was listening in on their conversation, President Bannon spoke again. Many changes will be made in the coming days. Don't be frightened. It's all meant to strengthen our fight against terrorists, foreign and domestic. I'll bet he thinks terrorists only have Muslim-sounding names, Jason snickered. The dark comedy wasn't lost, but everyone around the table felt the black energy spewing from the TV. In addition to fighting terrorism, I want to create more jobs and protect the sanctity of life. We don't need half the government departments we have. I'll be spending most of my time in the South. I want to make Atlanta and Birmingham our new co-capitals. It's about time we recognize our Southern roots and make sure wars aren't fought for things we don't want. Hail to the South and hail to the North for putting me over the top. A lot of you out there might be unsure about the future. While it's true I've never held an elected office, I also haven't been corrupted yet, Bannon sarcastically droned. Since I've never been corrupted, it's my duty to present new American ideas. Well, they're really old ideas. They say that American people are special, that through manifest destiny, God wanted us to move west. I'm a strong, God-fearing Christian, I have to say. God and his associates have assured me that moving the capital to the South will give America the jumpstart it needs. I encourage everyone to channel their rage and passionately admit what you haven't for a long time. Make sure everybody knows where you stand on everything. Don't ever hide who you are. This is a new day. We will fight until we win. and we will win. It will be spectacular because I'm spectacular. Thank you. So, obviously, just kind of a way for me to channel a lot was going through my head during this last election, the last year or two. I mean, I guess that's pretty much what any writer does. Uses what they know and what they've experienced to kind of spread some truth or whatever they want their message to be, I guess. But and I wanted to at least point out my mom did all the artwork, did the watercolor for the covers, and put it through Photoshop so it looks like a cool photo and everything. And it really just made me feel good to be able to do a project with her and bounce ideas off of each other. Just really makes me feel good. I'm looking forward to doing it on the new one. Next book, I'm half done writing the new one, so hopefully be out in the fall. I wanted to read the paragraph on the back of this one, because I thought it was pretty good too, but it was extremely hard for me to find a symbol of the Confederacy that wasn't the flag, so I had to choose the Union and the Confederate Civil War hats, and some doves for peace, of course. They weren't the freedom fighters of yesteryear. They were riding a mixed-race bus so all people would get treated the same. They were on opposite sides of the electorate, liberal and conservative. One was raised on racism and inferiority, the other with acceptance, peace, and love. Their unity needed to be constructed to show the world's white people that, yes, the world is Kodachrome. So, I just had to put something out there, something good, just with everything going on. I just kind of got sick about a lot of it, and, had to try to put out something positive and try to shine a little light where I can. So, any questions, comments?
Well, there's, of course, you're talking about the South, and Roy Moore comes to mind,
Well, sure.
and a political party's willingness to accept him into a federal government position in Congress for a vote, despite his hindrances,
Oh, you mean being a child molester, yeah.
Exactly. That kind of reaffirms what I felt. I feel like Congress or many people in government basically use the narrow and broad interpretation of the Constitution to use it, essentially not with anything more than their own self-interest in mind.
Sure.
And
I mean, that's kind of what politics is based on.
climbing the ladder. Yeah. It's still 48% of Alabama voted for him.
Well, and I think that's it. It's like, I think if you ask them, I mean, obviously the real judge of that would be, if Roy Moore was a Democrat, they would have strung him up in the town square. I mean, let's get real about it. They wouldn't have let that fly. The reason they were okay with it was because they thought Democrats were that evil.
When people are so willing to sell out the heart of a Constitution or something like that for such short-term gain, at such a high level of government, it makes it seem as if there is really no hope of becoming progressively more civil and genuinely deal with real issues that are caused by a system that leaves a wake of destruction and pain and misery behind it. So I like what I'm very interested in what you're
Sure.
Right?
Well, I mean, and part of my thinking on it, and maybe just because I'm like a eternal optimist, just because I gotta be. I mean, can't let the darkness overtake me, because then what's the point of anything? But I think that similar to how in the '60s, when a lot of more people were there was a lot of change going on. A lot of people were more active, were a lot more politically minded, paid attention more to what was going on. And there was a power structure that knew it was starting to lose its power. And so they knew they wanted to fight back against it as best they could. And I think we're at that stage again. They know the new generation is going to win. And history is such a proven factor that if you're against the rights for anybody, if you're just against the rights of people, historically you're going to lose. It's just,
Unless it's their First Amendment rights that you're going against, because it seems to me that we give a lot of lip service to our freedom of speech, but a career professional, for example, going to being an activist or anything like that, your career as a professional will probably be hindered by people that just don't like the fact that you have something to say that's different than what they agree with.
well, sure.
And it will deprive you of opportunities, make you lose opportunities that you currently have. And I feel like our country's in pretty tough shape.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, and again, the optimist, I guess, but
I see optimism in the women calling out all these guys for sexual harassment and abuse, and the Million Women March. I feel like could be a wave of women entering into being voted into Congress and things like that.
Sure.
And I feel like that would probably have a really good impact. And so there is hope. There are things that are signs of hopefulness.
Oh, and there is. You have the most radical. And granted, Donald Trump is not a one-off. Okay, it's been building to this for years. It's how the senators moved to the right and how the people who are considered the moderate Republicans these days were the crazies back then. Because back then, a liberal Republican used to be an actual thing.
Yep.
There were people that talked on both sides. And not to say that during the 60s and 50s in Congress, obviously things were not great in society for a lot of people. But at the same time, there's a lot of good out there. If anything, if I can draw any good thing from now, is that people at least are starting to wake up a little bit. They're paying attention. Sometimes it's because they're blinded, or it's because or they've been blinded. So the only way they'll pay attention is if they're, I like to think of it as their 2x4 moment.
We've had high standards for journalism up until Fox News came around, when they could use the word news in their name and programming, yet it defied the journalistic integrity of the profession in itself. And there you're talking, people are being indoctrinated and manipulated, actually, rather than, of course, I watch MSNBC fairly regularly too, things like that. But,
Sure.
It's like we take everything that has value and then we throw some mud into it, so that it's no longer an objective and defining thing. Rather, it's subjective. It's whatever you think that it is. So what do you want it to be?
Like what, how...
freedom of speech. I can come up to somebody who's different than me, and I can say whatever I want to because I have the freedom of speech. That's the type of thing that I'm referring to that's a Trumpism kind of a thing, Anyways, I've talked too much.
No, you don't.
No. But then it goes back to, the real sign of freedom of speech is, are you willing to defend speech that you don't agree with? And granted, unless it doesn't, incite violence. Because allowing Nazi marches down the street obviously is probably not a good idea. We see what happens with that. But also, we need to look and see what the amendments actually mean. And the freedom of speech, most definitely, religion, press, petition the government of grievances, all this stuff. But especially the big one, and I think Mom, you told me this story, or it was some news story or something, about the real story behind the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, right to bear arms within a well-regulated militia, right? Well, why were these militias brought up? The militias were needed because of these possible slave uprisings that were going on. Right. So, the right to bear arms to put down, slaves that were going to run away. So
the Taliban is another example of that. Well, because
sure.
Yeah, and other regimes that we oppose.
Oh yeah.
And bomb with drones.
Right. Exactly. But I mean, even if you go the Taliban, you could go ISIS, you could go Christian fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists. Every religion has its people that use that religion as an excuse to commit violence. I mean, those types of people, I think, would probably commit violence no matter what belief structure they had.
When it comes to them defying other people's civil rights, on the other hand, I feel like the 14th Amendment should be applied to give them equal protection.
Sure.
In which case you can object to and prosecute bad hate speech.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a great subject.
Yeah.
So what book is that one? Number 8?
Well, this is the fourth one in my series, and then I had these two come out this year. So I have 6 displayed on the table, but I also wrote 3 before that, before I started the novel series, which was kind of just in a way to see if I could write something long. These kind of short entries, kind of like this, but it was called Manifesto of a Madman for Good, and then I wrote different kind of short entries for that. So it's actually 9, which is crazy. I'm halfway, about 175 or 176 pages into writing the 5th one. Which, with how easy it's coming out, tells me I'm going in the right direction, or at least I'm doing something right. The more I talk to people, the more people. If I can talk to people, I mean, they all seem to be okay with it.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the whole point of these books, and the whole point of my writing is to have conversations with people, to break it down to a human level and just listen. Because I mean, and I've probably said it a bunch of times, I'm a very admittedly liberal person, but I've had very conservative people read my writing and like what I have to say because they see what I'm trying to do. If we can kind of break through the fog a little bit. I mean, granted, again, here's the optimist coming out again.
That could be a really hard thing to do.
Oh, it is.
Mine had somebody that I had worked with and who was incredibly high conservative values. Everyone does. It's black. It's not black.
It's
white to black on a spectrum of whatever, And but we would get into these arguments on Facebook, that were just like, oh my God, unbelievable. But the truth is, through enduring 2.5 years of that, he ends up like being one of my best friends. And it's like he's like giving me things all the time. I don't want his things, and things like that. But the thing about it is, it was breaking down those barriers that allowed him also to talk about the thing in a more positive way.
Sure.
And of course, I wouldn't say that I was always positive. I didn't use vulgar vocabulary or anything, but, good vocabulary can be very cutting as well.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I think you're right about the breaking down the barriers. It really, when the how should I say it, the media creates this, it creates this paradigm. It kind of controls, how do you say it? Controls the conversation. And people come aboard the roller coaster and they stay on that roller coaster.
Yeah.
But they don't ever get off of it in their everyday lives.
Yeah, I mean, we got to ask ourselves why is that?
Yeah.
Why is the media able to control the message like that?
It's an easy substitute for having to communicate with other people and deal with them.
Well, sure. But at the same time, I mean, there's multiple sources that go into creating these news stories.
Yeah.
And then multiple so it's nothing that's black and white, but I think using it as like a microcosm, it's basically you know, in the way that we create politicians, we are the media. It's not some separate entity that's separate from us. I mean, it's the same as in we're all human, you know. And we certainly have the ability to make better media, but also it takes people standing up. And granted, I've for a long time, and I've written it into a few of my stories even, I'm a firm believer of critical mass. You know, you get enough people together, I mean, I love the metaphor, right? 10%. You can probably get 10% of the country to believe in anything. Anything. Any crazy thing you could come up with. If you could ever get those 10% of people to show up somewhere, I mean, you're talking 30 million people. Nobody could stop you. Now, granted, and then I thought about the physical amount of ground that would cover, you know, 30 million people, but I guess the idea is that, you know, it's the illusion of power. It's the illusion of power that the government and everything kind of uses to control the people, makes themselves seem powerful. The people think they're powerless, goes into the whole game. They think they can't do anything, so they don't try, and then the government, you know, and it just kind of feeds on itself.
Do you think that what percentage of our population, you think, in the United States has the resources, time, or extra energy after they do their day's work, have to raise their children and things like that? Do you think, what percentage of those people do you think have 5 hours a week to be more politically active within the system and within their local areas?
Well, I think it can be worked into almost any lifestyle, really. I mean, it just depends if we want to. I mean, because, you know, being active doesn't mean sitting in front of the news for 4 hours, although that could be it. It could be just having, you know, human conversations with people you meet. Or it could be, you know, anything in your day, being nice to somebody, or you know, just any interaction you have. It could involve that. It could be basically starting to pay attention to things that are outside your bubble.
I think that, you know, I've had relationships with friends and things like that on the side, and had been involved in a church organization at a pretty dense level for 7 or 8 years, looking for ways that I could contribute. Feel like I was not just being nice and not just doing something, but having conversations about really how people treat people, you know, and things like that, so you can actually start to reverse it, because there's, at some point, the involvement can become so generic that you really don't get to you begin the niceties, the social acceptance, and all of that prevent you from actually stepping out on a limb a little bit and poking that thing that would, you know, that hurts a little bit, you know? So,
So it's, you know, obviously it's a big thing, it's a huge thing, but I think also, rather than the fake it till you make it thing, it's more the fact of the more we bring it to the forefront of our thinking, treating each other like we'd like to be treated, remembering to share, not messing up the same. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. I love the whole the poster that was up in the 80s, you know, everything we need to know we learned in kindergarten. And I probably said that before, but I love the metaphor.
It would be nice to, if a writer would more clearly define the things that almost all Americans have in common, no matter what socioeconomic area you're from, so that you could create the critical mass of these are the things that American believes, without all the extra crap that people build upon that.
Well, sure.
Let's come down to these fundamental 5 things, you know, and you can get 9 if you get, I mean, because I bet that there are 4 or 5 things that almost every single American has in common with each other, you know, like the balance between hard work and human decency, treating people, giving them human dignity, you know, that type of thing. But apparently, we don't really care about human dignity anymore. You know, senior citizens, handicapped children, you know, just
Well, yeah, I think that's part of it. A lot of people will say they'll do stuff and say they want to help and say they want to do all these good causes and all these things. But when it actually comes down to it and it's time to take action, they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they want to, have their cake and eat it too. I don't know if it's kind of that kind of thing.
Benefit from the thought.
Yeah.
Without their work.
Yeah, but I think the more that we actually consciously try to make an effort. I mean, it's not always having success. It's not always about having success. It's about putting ourselves forward and at least trying. Because the more of us that do that.
I mean, you can be a bigger human being in your loss than you are ever in your winning.
Yeah.
If you can lose with dignity and still not be
Jaded.
If I forget to put a bolt in somebody's lower unit of their motor and it falls out in the ocean and I've got to rebuild the lower unit on the thing, I could rebuild the lower unit on the thing, be nice about it, and shake hands and walk away, and we'll be better friends than we ever were or could have become in any other way.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I lost on the front side because I got to put out $500, $600. But on the back side, I get years and years and years of friendship with a person. You'll probably send me more customers.
Exactly.
And I think the people in our capitalist system neglects to recognize doing the right thing is worth the investment.
Well, sure, and I mean, at least, personal opinion, but I think it comes down to two. Capitalism, like communism in that way, is great on paper.
Yeah.
It's great on paper, but then when you bring in the human element and you give somebody that much power, it corrupts.
You run into distribution issues.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why we need to find something in the middle. And I think it was Michael Moore's movie that came out a few years ago. Years melt together as you get older.
Oh, yeah.
But the capitalism, a love story. And I remember at the end, there's one point that he brought up. It's like if you had communism and socialism on one side and capitalism on the other, we need something in the middle. Now you're talking capitalism, but with actual rules and regulations that are fair and abided by.
Equally applied as well.
Right. But if they were, would that even be capitalism anymore?
It would be social democracy.
Yeah. So I think this is where we need to eventually get to, hopefully. But
Well, let's fingers crossed for a bunch of women and Democrats.
yes.
Good Democrats getting in 2018.
Well, there's a few. There's a few. Definitely a few women that's going to run. For one, I'd really like to see Keith Ellison run. I don't know if he's ready yet. I just really would love to see a black Muslim on stage debating Trump. Just the whole image of that, I think, would be great.
See, I think there's some small things that are showing us that the change is happening. Like the transgendered woman that took the seat of the person that made the transgendered bathroom laws.
What was so interesting to me about her is that all the struggle that she's been through in her life and all the ridicule and all of that stuff, somehow she was still able to put it together in a really super concrete and focused way to basically, and she totally earned it.
But that's happening because that guy that said he was an elected official, and he said after the Women's March, he said, "Well, I hope they're all home in time for dinner." And somebody was in his office when he said that. She decided she was going to run against him, and she won. I mean, that's happened like 2 or 3, 4 times when it's just the opposite, that they think there's no hope, and it happens. So.
Hey, and Roy Moore lost, so there is some hope, right?
We still got Paul Ryan and
Well, yeah. Yeah, well, and that's it. And just, but see, that's the thing, too. As the Russia thing gets closer and closer to happening, there's going to be more of this crap that comes out, more distraction and everything. And, and I think we talked about it the other day. Wouldn't it be funny if Trump got taken down, not because of all the Russia stuff, but because of all the sexual assault stuff that finally came back and bit him in the ass, when it's something that people always knew about him all along.
Yeah.
People always knew him as that. But it's crazy. Alright, so, well,
Good discussion.
yeah, good discussion. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for giving me the ability to share some of my thoughts and ideas and my books, and just makes me feel good to share ideas and really make me think, feel good about, putting a voice out there and having some conversations and just talking to people and listening and just sharing human ideas. Makes me feel like I'm doing something. I mean, I like to think of it as, you could take the greatest people in history. You could take Martin Luther King, you could take Gandhi, you could even take Malcolm X after he came back from Mecca. But you could take the greatest people in history, and all they were able to do is take it the next step. And I'm not saying I'm comparing myself anywhere near to them. But if people like that were only able to take it the next step, if I can get a few more people to think, maybe change a few of their interactions, maybe their interactions change with a few people they interact with, and so on and so forth, then I'll feel like I serve some kind of purpose. So anyways.